Went to the second mid-cycle of the Antelope or the 2023.1 release. We usually have two mid-cycles in a development cycle, and this is the second one for Antelope. So we have Etherpad, which I've shared in the OpenStack Cinder channel and also in the chat. I will just share it again so everyone has the link. You can write your name in the attendees list. And yeah, let's get started then with the announcement. So we don't have a lot in the announcements. We have the Festival of Access reviews. So another 2-hour meeting this Friday, which we have a monthly, we have monthly Festival of Access reviews to clear out some backlog of reviews. So it would be good if more people can join. Another announcement is regarding the driver merge deadline, which is this week. And I also have a topic for drivers later. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the announcements. There are 2 more announcements, but I thought it would, people would have opinions on that. So I just moved them to topics. I just want to quickly get over them. So first was regarding the reviews. So lately I've been getting a lot of review requests. And when I look at the contributor, they haven't done a lot of reviews. So we have said that in the past, but I think there are some new contributors. So I just wanted to reiterate this thing. Brian started this very good thing of if you want reviews, then you need to do reviews first. And we just want to highlight the importance of code reviews, not just code comments in the community. It is very much appreciated, and it also helps with so we have lack of review bandwidth at a lot of times. So this will be really helpful. And even the contributors can talk to their managers regarding the importance of this in the open source community, and that would be really helpful for us. There is also a guide I had proposed, I think last cycle, which helps with some of the review guidelines, like how would you go about a review, how do you get started with reviews. So that might be helpful for you. So yeah, if you are doing enough reviews, then I think people would more likely take a look at your patches, and you would also get good reviews. So that's the
that review page you put together is very nice. I hadn't paid attention to it, so that's helpful. Yeah, and anybody, if you need, talk to your manager to just explain the situation. And then one other thing I've been noticing is that, right, unlike some of the projects on GitHub where you just need one person to merge or change, right, our policy is that you've got to have 2 core reviewers, right? So that slows us down a little bit, but it does, I think it helps quality a lot because, right, the more eyes you have on it, the more likely we are to spot something before it happens. So even if you're not a core reviewer, right, it's helpful for you to review, just put a note on it. If there's something you don't understand, you can say that. You can at least check to make sure the documentation stuff reads well. There's all sorts of things you can do to be really helpful. And that in turn will speed your stuff along, because it's easy for us in Garrett to do a quick search using your email address to see how many reviews you've done. So, right, we do everything in public. All that information's out there. So talk to your manager, because I know some managers don't understand. You've got your code. Why the heck isn't it in there? You should be writing code. But I mean, an important part of our community is that you've got to do reviews as well. So, all right, I'll shut up, but thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. And also related to some driver patches, I see a lot of driver vendors are contributors, so they can help out with each other's patches because the core Cinder community doesn't actually work on a particular driver, so their reviews are a lot more helpful there on the driver side. And we also have some contributors that actively review other driver vendors patches, which has been very helpful in the past. So yeah, as Brian said, we need more review contribution from the contributors. Okay. Another thing is I noticed some bare rejects. I understand like if we already know the failure, then we could just do a recheck there. But just to make the new contributors understand, like it is not uh, generally a good recommendation to do bare rechecks because it wastes a lot of infra resources. And also there is a mailing thread which counts the number of bare rejects every week or every month. So Cinder sometimes pops up on the top. I'm not sure if they have the correct script there, but yeah, I myself have seen some. So you can just add just recheck and the job name and timed out or post failure or any other reason. That should be sufficient for it. But yeah, just want to highlight this one as well. Okay, now that these things are out of the way, we can get started with the real topics. The first one I want to discuss is regarding the driver status. So we have the driver merge deadline coming up this Friday, which is in 2 days. We have 3 drivers proposed. I was under the assumption we had two, but Eric pointed out we have a Luster driver as well. So I yesterday checked the status of the driver. So the first one is the HP XP1, which is just a rebranding of the Hitachi driver. So they don't have a lot of code there, just new tests, a lot of tests, which is very good to see. And I kind of like, with a brief look, I like the driver, but again, their CI is failing on both iSCSI and Fiber Channel. So not really sure what's going on, but I left a comment there. So that needs to be fixed for the driver to be in a mergeable state. Is anyone from HP around? Doesn't seem so. Okay, so let's keep an eye on it. The driver itself isn't a lot of changes, but it would be good to take a quick look at the tests. Yeah, if the CI passes, then it should be good to go. Second one is the fungible NVMe TCP driver. I think I have reviewed it 2-3 times. Yesterday I reviewed it, and maybe the author has also updated it. So I will take a look again. But yeah, I think it is in a good state. It uses the NVMe TCP protocol, which is supported on the OSBX side. So we have compatibility for it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So yeah, we just need reviews on this driver. Get it going. Because the author is very responsive. They address comments very in a short time. Philip, you were saying
I want
something?
just to add something about the driver's deadline. We from Nerapi, we were working on a new driver for TCP as well. We could just submit the new driver just right now with unit tests uh, and some the release notes and all required stuff. So the patch, I think I know that's it's close to the deadline. I'm just in. I don't know if you have enough time to merge this during this release. Because yeah, we have like 3 days, and this is an entire new patch, entire new driver. Uh, I'm just asking if it's possible to add some exception, like just to add some reviews. If not, I can report to the manager. That's too late. And yeah, the patch I'm just in it. I already had the CI. It's running with the NVMe CPCI and also add a trigger for OS brick as well. So yeah, so this business driver would be running CIs and all requirements for merging a new driver. But yeah, it's 2,000 lines. I'm just pasting mm, the patch. Uh, it's I run some tests on my downstream and also in our downstream CI, so it's working. But yeah, since it's a very huge huge patch, we may not have enough time to merge in this on time. So yeah, that's I have about my patch, and I'm also starting working on some reviews. I'm just adding, explaining what was wrong with this because some of our engineers they left the NetApp team, so we have some movements on our side. Like if you remember, Fernando was part of this. He was actively working here, but he left like 2 months ago, and so we had some problems with this movement, and because of that, yeah, we couldn't finish the driver on time, or at least give some like 1 month for reviews like that. So we have some problems on our side. So I'm starting now work on some reviews, helping also reviewing others NVMe driver like you mentioned the Fugible driver and also reviewing other pets. But yeah, I was totally busy finishing this driver because yeah, Fernando left the NetApp team. Actually, I think he moved to Red Hat, and yeah, we tried to overcome this issue, and we have this huge patch too close to the deadline.
Yeah, thanks, Philip. So yeah, I have added that link. I'm not so certain that we could get the reviews in place. Is the CI reporting on it? Or?
Yeah, the CI, the NetApp CI is reporting. I'm adding the NetApp CI to the reviewers. It's listening to the Cinder, and it's running a specific job for an NVMe CP, and also for also others like XKZ and FSP and NFS drivers. But yeah, I will trigger the CI.
Okay, and did you say that it requires changes on the OS split side as well?
On OS Brick?
Yeah. Do you have any changes there as well to support this? Or is it
No change. I can run a do not merge patch there and just to trigger the CI because
okay?
the driver it's just I haven't changed the OS brick. I'm just using the the connector from there. That's so I just should like probably at same I probably add the same patch there and I can trigger I think to trigger execution on this OS brick. I should I should add the same patch there, right? Am I wrong?
No, I was just asking if there were OS split dependencies as well. Then it would be a whole new picture. Like then,
Yeah.
so yeah, I was just confirming that. So yeah, I have added this driver to the list, but again, we already have a lot of drivers which are unmerged, and I cannot guarantee if we could make it in to the deadline, because even if we extend the deadline, then we have this is a short cycle, and the OS break and Cinderclient release are also coming up. So I don't want to overlap things with them. Purely,
But yeah, maybe I misunderstood, but I think this doesn't require any OS break changes. This new
yeah, I
driver.
was yes, I
Okay.
was just confirming from Philip if it does.
Yeah, no
Mhm.
OS brick change. Just
Yeah,
just triggering because I think this is a new requirement, right? From this release and next, we need to trig the OS brick. changes also with our Cinder drivers. So I'm just
yeah.
mentioning that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Yeah, the point was that it was the CI is responding on OS Brick as well as Cinder patches.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, no worries. If you don't have enough time, yeah, I totally understand that. Too late. I'm just adding this. I like to say, okay, if you have free time and something, and like you can go there and review. I'm would be happy, and I will try also review some patch from now into the merge.
Sure, I would encourage everyone to take a look. Since, as you said, like if it has a already working CI, then it might not be a big issue, like verifying the changes at least. So yeah, there is this NetApp driver we can review. I've added to the list on line 17, the Etherpad.
Thank you so much.
No problem. So last one is the Luster one, which doesn't have a CI as of now, and Eric, I think, pointed out like we can get it verified with an upstream CI, but again that would require a totally different plugin like NFS or Ceph we have upstream. So it seems to be a very big effort, and until the driver is verified by CI, it wouldn't make sense to merge it. This one has changes in OS Brick, Nova, and Cinder side, which is also quite a lot. So currently, as I'm looking at it, I think we will need to postpone it to the next cycle, because from a CI standpoint, it doesn't look ready. I haven't been in contact with the author, so I don't think he's around as well here. But yeah, I can discuss with him like what all is required for the driver to be in a good state to merge it. Yeah,
the Nova patch looks kind of small, but if Nova doesn't merge, right, there's no point in us doing it because it'd be kind of useless. So I think it probably makes sense to postpone this for next cycle.
Yeah, even though OS Brick patch is very small, like it just adds the entry of Luster, and mostly it is added to the list of drivers inheriting from the file system connector. So okay, moving on to the next topic then. This is a update on the Cinderclient to OSC migration. So I was working on it, and I found out there were 6 or 7 missing commands, and I have added 4 of them, like not added, but it has +2 from Stephen. I'm not sure who other is an active core in OSC, but it isn't merged yet, but it is in a mergeable state. So 4 of the commands I have added, 2 or 3 are missing, which are related to snapshot, manage snapshot, and group snapshots. So I will add over the course of the time as well. What I wanted to discuss is, so Nova did this thing where they stopped accepting changes to the CLI on the Nova client side and asked everyone to only make CLI changes on the OSC side, so they don't accept, so they don't have new Nova commands, and it's just OSC commands calling Nova client. So would that make sense, the same design for Cinder as well? Like from next cycle, we can stop accepting CLI changes. We can still do changes in Cinderclient with the methods that actually call the API, but not the user-facing CLI changes. I'm not able to hear Eric. Please. Yeah, I think Eric was trying to say something, but couldn't hear him.
Hey, does this thing work?
Yeah.
I was trying to say that given that it's, I think, still a lot easier for us to land Cinderclient changes than OpenStack client changes, I'm not sure there's really a lot of benefit to doing that.
But if we add new commands to Cinderclient, then we again have to add the same support in OSC. Like at one point, we will need to migrate, so we will have to do it at one point. Maybe we can ask people to add commands on both ends, but that would be a lot of work. I'm not sure about that.
Well, if we're at a point where we think we can add stuff to OpenStack client in a reasonable, amount of time, then sure.
Based on my past experience adding commands, Stephen has been fairly active, and I think they don't have this two reviewer policy because I think they have less number of reviewers. So Stephen usually merges a lot of patches. So it didn't take a lot of time to get them into a ready state based on my past experience. I mean, we can surely discuss this in the PTG. But yeah, just wanted to bring this up. I'm also side-by-side testing all the commands that we have in Cinderclient versus OSC, and they are looking pretty good. The micro version is working well with most of the commands, like the commands I've tested with and I've added.
So I think I've heard that Nova has a policy that if you put changes into the Nova client, I think they don't have the CLI anymore. You're required to put up a patch to OSC. We want to go that far?
Yeah, so what they do is they do the CLI changes on the OSC side, then that calls Nova client, and Nova client does the API request. Other way to do it is via OpenStack SDK, but I think we lack a lot of support there. If we really want to get Cinderclient or Nova client out of the way, OpenStack SDK seems to be the way, but again, that is another effort where I haven't done much research, but I think we have a lot of commands missing from there.
With the OSC client is using Cinderclient code though, right?
Yeah, to do the API.
Not SDK. Okay. So how bad is it? Your experience in putting up patches, not the reviews, but actually writing them. How bad is it to add a command to OSC? Is it more complicated to understand than trying to do it to Cinderclient? Do you think?
I think if we understand the structure, initially it took me some time because for every command they have different classes and every class has the parser and different methods. But once we understand the structure, and also there are a lot of doc changes where they do, like in setup.cfg, there is cinder.csv, and there is another file. So 3-4 places where we have to do doc changes for every command we add. But I think if we get all the commands added, then it shouldn't be an issue. But yeah, once we understand the structure, it is fairly easy. I don't think it took a lot of time. So I got used to it.
Well, I was really dragging my feet about this, but it seems like the OSC client is the wave of the future. So, yes, maybe the future begins with Bobcat. So
I know we.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I know we got some of the issues around microversion support there sorted out for Cinder. Is there still work pending on that, or is that pretty much in good shape now?
So the 4 commands I have added all require microversions, and they are working pretty good. I have also tested the attachment APIs commands. They are also working good. I didn't feel any issue, but yeah.
I don't know if we did a deep analysis, but what I remember is they added the ability to specify a microversion. But for every microversion with a new feature, the new feature may not be implemented. So it's almost like somebody has to go back and audit every single microversion and ask, did this affect the CLI? And if it did somebody implement the same changes in OSC?
So I have a document that matches all the OSC commands with Cinderclient commands. I'm time to time updating it with the remarks, like testing it. So yeah, I haven't finished it, but yeah, I can really provide an update on it later.
That kind of thing seems like a bug, though, more than a reason not to work with them. I think Alan's referring to we have some microversions that include an extra field in some of the responses. And so those aren't going to be obvious from the, right, whether there's a command line one-to-one. But I think that's more like a bug than because I think that the past thing with the microversions was that, right, you couldn't even really use the commands. So at least we're at the
Correct.
point where
it would reject any attempt to specify a microversion. Now you can specify it. The question is whether it honors it.
Right. So, and I think, yeah, so that's the kind of thing we should either let people report as bugs, things that are like extremely important for us, we could go look. But I would not propose that Rajat go through every single command. Unless we have like a festival of OSC, and we just all sit down and split it up, because it's a lot to look for. I guess, what did they use? What's OSC? What's their bug reporting? Do they use Storyboard, or they move back to Launchpad?
They have Storyboard.
Okay.
I think there was a discussion in TC, like they are moving back to Launchpad from Storyboard.
Yeah, it seems like everybody is. So the TC hasn't required people to use Launchpad, but it's more and more people are jumping ship and going back to Launchpad, which has its own problems, but at least we'll all be in it together.
Yeah, we can surely discuss with the OSC team regarding the inconvenience to report these stories, because I might also have forgotten how to do that in a long time. But yeah, surely we can discuss that as well.
So as long as it's easy to report the kind of bug Alan's talking about, then I think maybe we could stop accepting changes. And then as we're working on stuff and you notice something missing, just file a bug. And it's probably a good intern task to go through and fix those. Once they pick up the pattern, it shouldn't be too bad.
Are we talking about not accepting changes or not adding new features?
I don't know, maybe both. I mean, because not fixing something would give people a reason to use the OSC instead of Cinderclient. Is that what you were thinking?
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, it just depends on what the goal is.
So yeah, I guess we should be clear about that. So my understanding of what the goal is we want to reduce the Cinderclient to just be like Python language bindings for the block storage API and not have its own command line interface. And that the command line interface would be implemented by the OpenStack client. So people want to use the CLI would do that. It sounds like we have nothing to do with the SDK at this point.
Yeah,
My
it would be
understanding.
good to get that support as well, but yeah, right now we don't have a lot going on there.
That would be a whole separate goal. I think the OSC people say, gosh, wouldn't it be great if everybody could use the SDK rather than the Python bindings from every project? But now attention shifts to, do we have SDK parity with Python Cinder Lib, Python Cinder, client?
I think the Grants team is working on the SDK part as well, but it might take them a lot of time, like more cycles to
Yeah, I think
implement
Manila
everything.
did as well.
So have they completed this, like the SDK parity?
Don't know.
Yeah, I think we can revisit this at the PTG again.
Yeah, I guess what might be helpful is instead of phrasing this as a question, maybe make it a statement, and then we can decide whether to finalize it or not at the PTG. So we give people time to think, but it's clear what we want to do.
Okay, rephrased it.
All right, so it sounds like we have so is the direction clear to everybody, or should we add some bullet points there?
Yeah, I added a point regarding the change acceptance, like how much time will they take to accept a change? What's the review bandwidth about? Yeah, I think it was a good start of this. Okay, so if no one has any other comments, then And move to the next topic. Is Talks 4 update. That time.
All right. I guess I don't have much of an update. Here's the haven't been paying attention to it this week. Here's okay. So right. So I put up a bunch of patches to get ready for Talks 4, and that included actually making sure we were using Talks 4. So they've merged. I haven't been able to get the Cinderclient to work. I need to go back and look at it again. There's something happening with the functional Pi 3.8 job where it seems to run and then it just times out. So I have no idea what's happening with that. And then the Cinder Tempest plugin stuff was failing, and I just didn't have the cognitive ability to figure out what was going on, so I just left it there and figured we'd address it when we had to. So yeah, so it's all right. So it looks like in master, except for Cinderclient, we've got Cinderlib's Gorkum proposed something a little bit smaller than this, but for Cinderbrick, well, I guess for Cinder and OS Brick, it looks like the RBDI SCSI client. In master, we definitely use Talks 4. So even in your local, when you run it locally, right, we've got it set up so that Talks is going to upgrade itself to 4 just in your virtual environment and then run the stuff using Talks 4. So that should give us a pretty good idea of when to expect breakages in the CLI. But what we haven't done is pin.
Brian,
yeah.
One thing regarding Talks 4 and 3 and whatnot. For the Cinderlib test I've been doing, because the gate is broken there, I was unable to reproduce the issues that the gate had, even with the same Talks version, in the same Python version, in running the exact same command. It worked locally, but it would fail upstream in the gate every single time, because apparently, for some reason, it cannot find the entry points defined in setup.tfg. I don't know why or how, but so even if we set things to run exactly the same, apparently upstream and downstream, there could be cases where it will fail in the gate and work locally. Just one.
It's a good point. And I don't pretend to understand exactly how Talks works, and I haven't dug into it, but the way it installs stuff has changed. And I think that's probably what we may be seeing.
Yeah, but the weird thing is that I was using the exact same version, 4.2.4 or something like that, which is the one that was running in the failing CIO. And I even run the same Python version, and everything works locally.
Yeah, I guess the thing is, I think the thing to check for Cinderlib is if we set, so I know for Cinder and probably OS Brick, we have a requires at the top of the Talks INI file for virtualenv, I think. And the reason we do that is virtualenv sets a constraint around setup tools and pip and one other thing that we might not care. I guess virtualenv itself. And that way we make sure that we're using the exact same pip and the exact same setup tools. So that might be a difference. If we're using different setup tools than they're using in the gate, you might get a different result locally. It's crazy because, stuff works great locally, and then.
That's what I was trying to get at, that this is a bit crazy. If people see errors running locally with the same thing in upstream, don't see them locally, but see them upstream, that they haven't gone crazy. It could happen.
All right. Yeah.
For now, for Cinderclient, I just submitted a patch to use Talks 3, and
Okay.
surprise, surprise, everything works.
Okay. So that's the other thing. So now I've got another series of patches, all the stable branches for most stuff, and Cinderclient's not working. I have no idea why not, but that's happening. So those are, at line 84 in the Etherpad. So if you look at those, what those do, so, why don't we need them yet? Well, I think it's sort of a crapshoot what you wind up with when stuff is being run upstream. So there's several different ways so I think a lot of jobs are still running in in Tox 3, even though we could be running in Tox 4. It's just kind of weird. So what these patches do is these do that same kind of trick that we're doing in master to make sure we use Tox 4 locally. They make sure that you're going to use Tox 3 locally, and it also affects when in the gate it's running Tox 3 for us. Now what's happened is so one thing I ran into in the Cinderclient functional test is they build a dev stack and then go ahead and run the test. And it was using Tox 4 because somebody at some point in the dev stack install was just pip installing Tox for some reason, and it just grabbed the most recent one. But it depended on some other factors, whether you actually got Tox 4 or Tox 3. So I think we're going to need these patches, but I guess we can wait to merge them until stable gates break. But I don't think they would hurt, except for Cinderclient. Anyway, just want to be aware that they're here, so in case I get hit by a bus, and then at the same time, the gates start breaking, everybody's ready. And there may be a better way to do this stuff, so please take a look at them if you have a chance to just see. Now, there was a discussion so talked about this in the TC, and there were sort of 2 points of view. Some people thought, Tox 4 is the future, so we should just do that and get it over with. And other people thought it's way too destabilizing. And that's what won out. So the position of the TC right now is in the stable branches, want to be running Tox 3, or at least there's no reason you have to run Tox 4. So it's perfectly acceptable to be running Tox 3. So that's what we're proposing. I guess that's it. The only other thing is there is there's a Zool role called ensure Tox that makes sure that Tox is present on your system. And then they introduced a variable called ensure Tox version. And what that, just want to say, the name is a little bit misleading. I mean, it's called ensure_Tox_version because it's a version variable that's related to the ensure Tox role, but it doesn't ensure that the Tox that's running is the one that you set in that variable. It's only used in the case when ensure Tox runs and Tox isn't present, then it will go ahead and pip install Tox using the version you specified. But if Tox is already there when ensure Tox runs, that's it. It succeeds. So what Tox you get will depend on whether something happened in like the dev stack case where, I'll say it out loud, Neutron was going ahead and pip installing Tox just in the middle of some stuff. And then you wind up with the latest Tox probably. Or as package managers for the distributions start packaging Tox 4 instead of Tox 3, right? The image will have Tox on it already when CI runs, and then that's the Tox you get. So that's why we have to do this kind of trick where we specify requires Tox less than 4 in the Tox INI and the stable branches. So anyway, I'll shut up now. I believe those work. Apparently, we don't need them yet, so I don't know whether that's good or bad. And the other thing that's maybe related to Cinderclient, although I'm not sure, there's this other thing with, so there are a couple of issues with the new talks. Although again, I haven't looked. They've been releasing like crazy as they've been discovering and fixing regressions. So this might be fixed by now. There's some kind of weirdness about PBR that Stephen Finucane had reported, and I don't know if that's fixed yet, but I think it's related to using setup tools, and I don't understand that stuff at all. So anyway, so I'm not claiming I can fix the Cinderclient situation, and we may need to do what Gorka's proposing with Cinderlib and just pin it to 3 for now. But we haven't. Well, I guess we need to decide what we want to do about that, because right, the Cinderclient release is coming up in a couple of weeks. All right, I'll just shut up. So there are patches up there. Take a look at them. Some stuff's broken and some stuff is not.
So yeah, as you said, like the release is coming up and we need the gate in a stable state. Although I'm not sure if we didn't have any new feature this cycle, so maybe not a new Cinderclient patch as well. We can take some time to review the Tox4 situation. But yeah, surely if anything that requires urgent merging, then we need to pin to Tox3. I think that would be the way to go.
Yeah, tell you what, I'll take an action item, just put up a patch to master, ping it to 3, just so we can be sure it works, and that so we don't have anything to worry about in the worst case. All right.
Okay, I've added that action item, and yeah, in case we require that, we can just merge it. Okay, I think apart from Cinderclient and Cinderlib, we are fine with other projects. It is working nicely.
I think if you do anything slightly complicated is when weird stuff starts happening. So I think some projects have gotten away with becoming Tox4 ready just by hitting the pass env line and making sure each thing's on its own line, and that's all they had to do. But like with Cinderclient, I mean with Cinderlib, we install, the most recent Cinder. Well, we install a developer version of Cinder and OS Brick, then run stuff. And I think that's why we're hitting some weird problems. I still don't understand what's happening with Cinderclient, though.
Yeah, we can surely revisit this at the next Cinder meeting, or PTG should be a very good place to get all the projects aligned with the Tox4 vision, and they can also share their experiences with that. I'm really not sure if how other projects are dealing with it, like Nova Dance.
Yeah, I started to look, but it's like nobody was requiring the use of Tox4, so a lot of stuff was passing, but when you looked, it was still running in Tox3. So I'm worried that so I think we're going to be ready because we're actually using Tox4. I'm afraid once Tox4 starts actually showing up everywhere and stuff's running in it, that there'll be breakages all over the place. But probably don't have to worry about that until milestone 3, when stuff will break.
I think we are having deadlines in 2 weeks because the cycle is short. So yeah, in the first or second week of Feb, we will start having the client and non-client releases. So, okay, thanks, Dan, for providing this update. Yeah, we will revisit it when something comes up. Okay, moving to the next topic, it's Python 6 by Eric.
Yeah, we've had people for a little while submitting some patches to try to remove Python 6 from Cinder, and we've rejected them saying we're not doing that yet. So I wanted to see if now was the time to do this, or what the actual plan is going to be for when we decide we can get rid of 6. My personal opinion is I think we should do it now, but curious what other people think.
Yeah, I think if we do it now, it's going to break the documentation build. Unless, I was looking into this too. There's, it's the thing we use to generate the support matrix, I think, as some Python code. And it depends on something that doesn't have 6 in its requirements .text, but imports 6. So it's only working because somebody else is importing 6. So I don't know. That's not a reason not to do it. It's just that it's going to be a little painful.
Well, I guess my first target is, can we at least accept patches that remove 6 from, chunks of code in Cinder? Presumably that kind of thing will be caught by the gate and very noticeable. There's weird issues like that. Definitely have not seen that one in particular, so I don't know too much about what's happening there.
Yeah, I think the only reason we held on to 6 was as a convenience to driver developers. So this would be a good time for them to speak up if they have a strong opinion about it. But I think Eric's right. I mean, 6 is long in the past. Last Python 2 we supported was in train, which is not end of life yet, but it's coming.
I think we've actually added drivers since then that have 6 in them, which is not what we want to do.
Yeah, even the backport situation which we discussed during that time, it is not an issue now because the last release which we backport to, like we can backport to train also, but the last release supported upstream supports Python 3, so backport shouldn't be an issue either. And yeah, if we can detect these problems in gate, then we can merge with patches that remove it cleanly, and we can take a closer look at the patches that break the gate or as the documentation job as Brian stated. So I would also vote for going on with it.
Yeah, probably that patch for Sphinx classification. We just need to ping Steven because I think he handles the documentation type stuff too.
We need to fix something in Sphinx or in
just in this one. This I put the link to that patch there. It's just a simple thing. I think what happened was I removed, I forget, some reason, if nobody is importing 6, requiring 6, then this thing breaks. I think I what's the date of this thing? It's been sitting here a while. December 16th. Yeah, this might have been Tox 4. Screwing around with Tox 4, I found this. But it's probably not a Cinder. I mean, it's not really a Cinder issue as much as, right, other people are pulling out requiring 6, even though stuff actually does need it. It's just finding it from some other project.
Well, fortunately, issues like that should be pretty easily caught with unit test type jobs. Or duck builds in this case.
So it sounds like people are in favor of getting rid of 6, or at least not opposed.
Do we already have contributors like pushing patches for removing this?
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 of them that have been up for quite a while.
Okay, I haven't noticed, but it would be good to take a look at them as well.
I think we actually merged a number of them, but there's some that are still lingering.
Okay, I think the general consensus is like we should go forward with it, and we can figure out the issues as we go through. Okay, so moving on to the next topic. So I should have covered this with the fungible driver, but I just noticed it. I set it as a separate topic. So I noticed that the fungible driver is able to clone the volume when it is in available state, but not able to clone it when it is in use state. The team said like they could take another path by creating a snapshot and creating a volume from it to support that. But I'm not really sure what the guidelines we have for it, because the support matters just say clone volume. I'm not sure if it should be. I assumed it should be able to clone it when it is attached also.
So, I mean, in general, drivers should do this. Probably can. I looked at this driver. They support snapshots. So if nothing else, their cloning an in-use volume path can just use a snapshot and do it that way. So I don't see any reason for them to not do this.
Yeah, they propose the idea to do it via snapshot, but I just wanted the team confirmation if it would be good to support that. So yeah, I think we should just ask them to implement that way that they could clone and attach volume as well. We'll add it to the review then. So Anish, I see you on the call. Do you have any other concern regarding your driver? This is the one I noticed, so I just shared it.
Hi Rajat and hi all. Yeah, so regarding this comment, I think, yeah, we can go ahead and use the snapshot mechanism. So create a snapshot and then use that for creating the clone. And no other concern as of now. So I have addressed the comments that you have given yesterday. So I hope, it looks good.
Okay, yeah, thanks for addressing them, and I will surely take a look.
Thank you.
Okay, then moving on to the last topic of today, which is Cinder retype with migration policy on demand. This is by Satya. Satya, are you around?
Yeah. Yes, Rajat.
Yeah, hi. You can go ahead with the topic.
Yeah. So Cinder retype with a migration policy on demand is allowing only for volume type with extra specs, volume backend name and availability zone. But few of our volume types happen to have few other extra specs, in spite of which those volumes still has to be migrated from driver specific code. So there is a specific check in the volume manager, so where it is only considering these two parameters for the extra specs, and even if the rest of the other parameters is also present, it is defaulting to the Cinder provided generic migration. So which is not desired in my requirement. So we are writing a migration support from driver specific code. So the flow is kind of redirecting into the generic code. So we were hoping to support migration even if it has extra specs beyond those volume backend name and availability zone. Just for example, so we have a pool parameter. So if the pool parameter is also present, it's not entering our code.
Yeah, I think before the migration, we compare the extra specs and see if the migration is possible from.
Yes,
It
yes.
is kind of retype with migration, so we compare the volume types and the extra specs that Satya is referring to. It is backend specific. We only compare in the volume manager the Cinder specific parameters that are the availability zone and volume backend name. But in his case, he has a backend specific parameter pool, which isn't considered. Like we don't consider any backend specific parameter, even if they match in both the volume types, the source and destination one. So yeah, that I think needs some help around. Like, should we add that kind of code into the manager, or should it be driver specific thing only?
I don't quite get the change, sorry. This is Gorka. This is looking in the extra spec for a key that I don't even know what it is, volume migration enable in volume type extra specs. That sounds weird.
Yeah, hi Rajat, this is Mobin. Actually, Satya has pushed one patch related to that one. Satya, you want to talk about that patch?
I'm talking about the patch that is, if I'm not mistaken, on line 105 of these meetings Etherpad. That says, I don't know. Isn't that what we're talking about?
Yes,
The patch?
exactly. Yes, exactly. We are talking about that
But
one.
if I'm not mistaken, that patch is basically looking for a custom or a new extra spec, because volume underscore migration underscore enable, as far as I know, does that even exist today?
Yeah, so Luca, they have that as a driver specific. I'm not sure if the patch is correct, but what they want to do exactly is compare the driver specific extra specifications.
Yeah, but the code, what it has is return true in the manager when it has a new key as an extra spec.
Yeah, that code could be wrong, but I think the original intent is to compare the extra specs of two different volume types for driver specific properties. If I'm wrong, like
yes, that was the original intention. So if it if it has like we added that parameter, that was an extra one, so that whenever it encounters that, it would return a true value for the flow to change towards the driver code. And also, like I was also not sure on what value to expect, because since it was also a driver specific one, so I thought of coming up with some value which could be common to all, but I was not able to come with one. So I started with this initial patch.
I really don't like this code change in terms of we are introducing what would we consider a magic string into the extra specs that somebody has to know for each specific driver, whether they can put that value there or not. And that will only be effective for some drivers. So that looks a bit flaky to me and prone to errors. So I could think that probably what we can try to find is a more generic solution. For example, something that actually queries a specific driver in terms of,
Yes.
hey, driver, can you migrate from this to this? And the driver tells you, yeah, looks good, or something of that sort. Instead of just saying, yeah, the migration looks good, if we have a magical value in the extra specs.
Yeah. Even I was hoping kind of some exactly like that. So because there is a function like can migrate from driver specific code. So that function itself is popping only these two values. So it's not even just entering driver to check whether it has implemented or not. So the control is not reaching my code itself. So to ensure that. So that's why I added this parameter. So yeah, but because this is a concern, because pool attribute, I don't know like why it's no longer supported, but pool is something which is a crucial part of our requirement. So if this pool attribute is specified in volume type extra specification, it's not entering migration code.
For your case, the thing is that in Cinder terms, we have the concept of pool. So maybe your driver is just not using the concept that Cinder has of pools, which is Cinder has the concept of a backend and a pool.
Yes.
And you're adding yourself internally as an additional spec key that pool.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, from Cinder's perspective, that specific use case, it's weird because your pools should be reflected as a Cinder pool, not as something external. But let's forget about the fact that this is specifically a pool, because the pool, I think it's a bad example, and probably there are other cases where this could be helpful. So I would say that we need to have a code that queries the drivers and says, can you handle this difference in the extra specs?
Yes, that will work
in the driver. And the driver by default says false, so everything will work as it is today. And if in your driver you want to support it, for example, pulse is fine or things like that, then it is in your driver where you override that method, say there's a specific difference in the specs I can handle.
Yeah, got it.
Because in theory, it could be, in terms of Cinder, this is unacceptable. That two extra specs have different pool values and they are interchangeable, that's wrong. That's 100% wrong from Cinder. The extra specs are specific values that a backend or a pool matches against. Think of this as, instead of pool, which is your case, it's compression. We would be changing, for example, from one backend that supports compression to one that doesn't support compression, and it could be fine, when it is not fine. That's
Yes,
the whole
yes.
point
Yes,
of having the extra spec defining values, that they describe a pool or a backend.
yeah.
So I think it is kind of wrong in your case that you can do a, well, maybe not. Maybe I'm mistaken here.
Yeah, I think the idea to compare it within the driver, because it could differ from driver to driver, which extra specs they want to compare. And they could
Yep.
compare the general ones which we have. And I like the idea of asking the driver to compare it and returning to Cinder if the reason the migration codes for Satya, like it Cinder does a pre-check in the retype case and then does the migration. So that's why it fails before it reaches the driver code for migration. So yeah, I think what Gorka proposed, I also like it, and yeah, looks like a good idea to me.
So, yep, I think the change would be, well, okay, I think the problem may be that we have, I think, the same migrate volume code for two different cases, right? To diff. Well,
Yes.
for retype and for migrate. So but didn't they try the retype before the migrate? Because I think we do a retype call first. So if your driver is able to do a retype with migration, you could make it happen in your retype method on your driver.
In our case, storage backend is different. So we have to go with a migration policy on demand, so which would eventually move towards a migrate volume code only.
Okay.
So which driver is it?
It's a IBM SVC.
Okay, then maybe yeah, we either need an additional method in the migrate volume for the diff, or the method should be called, I'm not sure, from the retype call to disregard some of the diff values. I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly. So we can either ask the driver, hey, is this diff okay with you? But I think the driver could have missing information there, because it may not know whether both drivers, both volume types belong to the same storage system. By the time we are at the diff, maybe we don't have enough information. So maybe we need to add it to in the manager to the retype method directly, the call to the driver to ask whether this can be handled.
Yeah, like an acceptable list of extra specs which could be handled by driver side.
Well, we could tell the driver directly, this is volume type A, this is volume type B. Can you handle this?
Okay, okay.
That is just an idea. I'm not 100% sure of the parameters method that would be sufficient for all the cases. But I would assume that a driver would like to know more than just the difference between the volume types. They would actually want to confirm, is this the same backend, or is this both cases, are both my drivers or not? Because if they are not both their drivers, for example, in your case, if the extra specs differ on just the pool, but they are different drivers, you may say, hey, I cannot do it, even if the difference is just the pool.
Yeah.
So maybe you want to have the whole volume type from the source and the destination to make the decision of whether you want migrate volume to be called or not.
Yes, yes. The difference in volume backend is working fine. Only the extra specs.
Yeah, but the solution should be usable by other drivers. So the solution you propose must not only resolve your specific use case, but also other possible drivers.
Okay.
Because we tend to try to make code changes that are generic enough that other drivers can also make use of this.
Yeah, got it.
I think that's a good proposal. I mean, if you've got the source volume type, all that information, and the target volume type, all that information, that's everything you need. So there wouldn't be anything else that you could add.
Well, yeah, that would be something else, which is the actual source backend driver and the destination. Because at this point, you will only have one of the two drivers loaded locally. The other one would be a remote. And you don't know what it's running because in the volume, we don't reflect it in any way. The backend, okay. The actual driver that it's running. But you don't know if it's IBM, Ceph, LVM, you have no idea. Looking at just the volume or the volume type in some cases. That may be something that somehow we also need to pass. I'm not entirely sure. It's just that I don't think this is so trivial as to add this magic value there, because this code will resolve the problem they have. I have zero doubt that it does. It's just that I don't think it's very usable in terms of the whole Cinder project. It's quite hidden for an administrator to know that there is this magic value. And they actually have to do things manually.
So maybe we can start with documenting and testing these changes, maybe because if you want to implement it in the IBM SVF, then and go with the generic route, then manager needs to support all the drivers, as Luca said. So we need to test a few cases and document this somewhere, like what kind of method will be introduced in the volume driver interface for drivers to support it. So I think we can start with that and see if we have the problems that are currently discussed.
Yes, yes, Raja. Yes, Raja. I could probably get started with our approach.
So I can see the SVC driver is just support retype, and if we are able to perform a successful retype, then we don't go into the migration code. So are you like, I'm just trying to understand the scenario, like which issue you're.
This is a cross-cluster migration. So apparently, like Cinder is also supporting cross-cluster migration through retype. So retype with migration policy on demand. So yeah, now that part we are trying to implement from driver specific code, that migration. So yeah, so this is the first blocker which we are facing from the common code, where it's preventing to reach our code, and it's using the generic code. Yeah. So because we have.
Yeah, I was just going to say that it looks like some of the information I was complaining that was missing, maybe part of it is there because there is a host parameter, for example, that is passed to the migrate volume. And in the host parameter, there are things like storage protocol, in the capabilities, location info. So there is a bit of information, and maybe something related to the backend is also present there, which would maybe simplify the implementation.
The host?
Yeah, if you look some point,
like
the migrate.
Will it carry like parameters which would be useful for like volume backend, like R size, compression rate? So those kind of parameter, could we still pass it in a host?
Mm-hmm. I'm talking about where is this field coming from? The retype method seems to be getting a host dictionary. In the host dictionary has things like the capabilities dictionary. In the capabilities is something that the drivers report, if I'm not mistaken. So in there is useful information for a driver to decide whether they can do the retype or not. Well, the migrate or not, probably.
Sorry, like I didn't get it. Like, are you
okay?
trying to say that
we were saying, or I was saying, oh, we should call the driver and ask the driver, can you do the migration for this specific retype? And I was saying that it could be somewhat difficult for a driver to make the decision based only on the volume types of the source and the destination, because it would say, I don't know what the driver of the destination is. Locally, I have the driver, I am running the driver of the source, but I have no idea about what driver is in the destination. And that was one thing that I was saying that could happen, that the driver would be missing some information to make that decision. But then I see that we have a host field, a host dictionary that the retype method in the manager receives as an input.
Okay.
And in that host, there is interesting information that could maybe used by the driver to make a better decision on whether it can do it or not.
Okay.
So maybe the driver method needs to receive 3 parameters: volume type of the source, or source volume, volume type of the destination, and the host dictionary of the destination. Maybe that's what it needs to receive.
Okay.
I don't know
Now,
if it may need something else, but I think maybe with that, drivers could make an informed decision.
okay.
And I like the idea of drivers being able to decide by themselves whether they can do it or not.
Okay, but I just wanted to bring up that there's a one specific method which says as can use driver migration. So this is a method, I think, which is evaluating whether a driver can support it or not. But it's not contacting the driver here, but just popping out values, I guess. So I'm currently blocked by this method. So can use driver migration. It's kind of taking decision just by popping it, not by contacting any driver here.
Yes, but maybe we need to make the decision of whether we can do this at a different point.
Yes.
That's what
That is
I'm
the method.
wondering.
Yeah, that is the method which is ensuring whether a driver can handle this or not. So nowhere in that code it's contacting driver. It's just making a decision, comparing the what just remain those 2 extra specs. So,
but at this point in that method, we don't have enough information for the new query that we want to do, which is ask a driver whether it can do the migration or not for a retype.
Yes.
Because at this point, we only have the diff.
Yeah.
That may not be enough to determine whether it can do it or not.
Is there like any chance, like if we could move this method towards our driver specific so that all drivers could implement this check? And since it says that can use driver migration, which should be ensured from a driver.
And what are you going to pass to the driver? What parameters?
I think the same diff would also work for me. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying, that it works for you, but maybe not for others.
Okay.
That for you, it's enough, for the case you have in mind, it's enough to know the diff and check, oh, it's full, then it's fine. Is this other thing? Then it's fine. There are a number of keys that you say it's fine. But maybe for other drivers, they need more information than that. They need to know what is the driver that is running in the destination. Is it the same driver as me or not?
Okay.
And for that, diff would probably not be enough.
Okay. Got it.
So it's not only for you, but also for the others that additional information may be needed.
Okay.
Okay, just to summarize, like, is there any other workaround?
That's the thing, that I don't think we want the workaround. I think we want a new functionality. That's the thing. That the
Okay.
patch you propose, it's kind of a workaround, a quick
Okay.
fix to get the behavior you desire. But from a Cinder perspective, it's a bit of a hack in terms of, yeah, this is probably not what we would call a proper feature.
Okay.
And since what you're proposing, it's something interesting and relevant to other drivers, is why we are, or at least I am, pushing back, saying, I would like to see this as a proper feature other drivers can leverage as well. And now that I say that other drivers may want to leverage as well, I go and think, what would other drivers need to make the decision? And it's diff is not enough for other drivers for sure. So, and that's where I go with, we need to pass additional parameters, which
Okay.
could be as easy as just passing them from the retype if we don't have it in the, it's just adding more parameters to the can use driver migration. It could be as easy as that. You pass also the volume, you pass also the destination volume type and the host, and you call it from the migrate. If you don't have it in the migrate, well, then just the parameters from the retype, you backtrack until you can get all the information that you need in this call, and then you call the driver and you're good. That's all I'm saying, that we need more parameters when we call the driver.
Okay. Okay. Yes. I think, yeah, maybe I will get started with the approach.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And also,
If it's not clear, ping me on IRC and I will just do a quick 5 lines or 10 lines of code change to try to illustrate what I'm saying about passing the parameters down and all that.
Yes. That would be great help.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. Sure then. I think that helped. Thanks. I'll take it forward from here. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for discussing that. And I think initially it might be only the base driver implementation, and your driver can implement that method. Use that if they need it. But yeah, it would be good to pass more parameters rather than changing the function type every time, the signature every time. We want new parameters. Okay, I think that's all we had for topics. We still have some time, so anyone who came up with a topic during the mid-cycle and would like to discuss it. I don't think we have any other topics then. I will just stop the recording.